This time, my cousin came up with one of his brilliant ideas again. He decided he's going to teach other people how to make a simple game. If he actually knew how to do it himself, it might even be a good idea. The problem is, this could easily turn into a full-on trash game course. So yeah, obviously, the person in charge of showing the world how to copy my cousin's masterpieces is me, the one who doesn't understand a thing about programming. Anyway, he did give me some very specific instructions, and in that, trust me, he's a professional. So let's start with the first thing to do. Basically, his method is to build the game in small pieces and slowly expand it over time. What does that even mean? It works exactly like trash. Let's say today you eat a fish and throw the bones in the bin. Tomorrow you eat an apple and toss the core in the same bin. By the end of the week, you've got this big bag of garbage and nowhere to put it because the trash collectors haven't even picked up last week's yet. And yeah, that's actually a pretty accurate analogy for my cousin's creativity. So, applying this idea to our game, my cousin said he wants to teach you how to make a worse version of Super Mario. So yeah, our first piece of trash is going to be a stretched out cube as the player and a flat plane as the ground. That's it. Just that. Obviously, to make a proper tutorial, we should create a new project. Basic common sense. Something literally anyone would do. But not my cousin. He said we're just going to add this into XPcade. But hey, for you, it's basically the same thing. Just open Unity Hub and create a new project. Another genius move from my cousin. He's using Unity 2019. Yeah, a 7-year-old version. But according to him, it doesn't matter because he only uses stuff that still works today, which basically means cubes. So if you're still here and somehow, against all odds, you're actually following this tutorial, pause the video and go create a new Unity project. I know you're probably just watching this for a laugh, but I have to say it. Otherwise, if my cousin finds out, he's gonna fire me from the supermarket where I work. And yeah, he's my boss. Now you should be looking at a screen like this, obviously a bit more updated than my cousin's ancient 7-year-old version. Anyway, let's create two things, a plane and a cube. My cousin says he doesn't have time to teach you how to use Unity, like how to move around the editor or frame objects. So if you're still watching and you don't know that stuff, just pause and go find a basic tutorial. Or, stay here just for the jokes and support an underpaid supermarket employee. All right, now to finish this micro project, cousin style, let's make the cube a bit more human-shaped and stretch the plane along the x-axis. That's where the game's gonna happen. Then we give them some color. Green for the plane, red for the cube. To do that, you'll need to create materials. Now, my cousin did show how to do it, and then just use the ones he already had in his project. Yeah, super practical. Kind of like when he schedules us for double shifts on holidays. All right, next step, applying gravity to our cubic character. Sorry, my bad. My cousin's character. So here, my cousin is adding a component called the character controller. He says it's specifically designed for player movement. And then we apply this script I'm about to show you. Now he lifts the character up into the air, and when you hit play, it falls down and lands on the ground. Of course, my cousin already has this script ready. You, on the other hand, have to copy it while I show it on screen. While you're doing that, let me tell you how my cousin discovered this component. Basically, he spent 4 years writing massive amounts of code just to handle collisions with obstacles. Then one day, completely by accident, because he hates learning new stuff, he found out this thing already existed and worked way better than his version. So naturally, he kept using his own for a while anyway. But eventually, he had to accept the truth. The Unity devs are just better at this than he is. They're professionals. He's not. My cousin's next step is to stretch the ground and make the player move left and right. Very simple. To do that, we just need to attach a script to the player. My cousin wants to try something new here and create this script separately on its own. Normally, he'd just dump everything into the same script that controls the player or even the whole game. But this time, he wants to use you as a test subject for his experiment. For now, we'll use the A and D keys to move the character left and right. Okay, sorry. My cousin made a mistake. It was the D key, not S. Anyway, for your enjoyment, he added something completely unnecessary, that namespace at the top. This basically makes sure the scripts from one game don't get mixed up with another one and cause errors. Now, just to make things more confusing, my cousin is using his own input controller class inside the script. You don't need to do that. Just leave the code as it is. The code he's writing is equivalent. It just also handles a controller and some alternative inputs that work across the whole game system. So yeah, you thought you understood what was going on, and now you don't anymore. Get used to it, because this is exactly how it works when my cousin is in charge. Okay, next step for this little micro mess is making my cousin's rectangular prism jump. To do this, my cousin needs to test a bit of code to see if it actually works. First, my cousin creates a new script and attaches it to the player. The idea is to have an upward movement that triggers when you press a key and then automatically gets pulled back down over time. My cousin has to figure out the right value to balance the gravity. Now my cousin needs to prevent cheating, like making the player fly by rapidly spamming the spacebar. So he adds a timer that disables jumping for at least 2 seconds. Now it's time to add some extra confusion to the mix and show you how my cousin replaces his own input controls in the code. You don't need to do this. Even more confusion. My cousin forgot that the code needed to be moved into fixed update. So now take everything that was in update and put it inside fixed update. This reminds me of when I moved pallets for him at the supermarket. Another correction. At this point, my cousin is going to show you the code you should have because even he realizes it's gotten completely unreadable. With this correction, he says you can now hold the key down and keep jumping. Now my cousin has realized that the scripts he just made aren't actually independent inside his project. So he decides to fix it by creating a single script for the player and putting everything inside it. Surprise, surprise. Exactly what he should have done from the beginning. Thanks for your cooperation as test subjects. Finally, he shows you the final script as you should have it, comments excluded. Next step, we add an obstacle the same height as the player and balance the jump so the player can comfortably get on top of it. Here, my cousin has to experiment with different values for jump max and gravity in the other script, and for the friction factor, that zero point 0.8, we use to dampen the jump and bring the player back down. He keeps tweaking them until we get the right balance. My cousin is lazy and doesn't feel like going crazy tweaking everything. The gravity should probably be a bit stronger, but in the end, this kind of works, and that's exactly why his games are trash. Anyway, you'll definitely be able to balance these values better. My cousin's current ones are these, which he's about to show you. Now we attach the camera to the player so we can move around the screen. I mean, my cousin attaches the camera to the player, not me. I don't even know how to program. It's not like I'm pretending the game is my cousin's when it's actually mine. No, of course not. Why would you even think that? All right, my cousin tweaked the values. Gravity is now set to 10 and jump max to 40. Everything else stays the same. Now it actually feels a bit better. Just for the record, my cousin wants to show you the class he uses for input, just to prove it's basically the same thing. There's a main class and a static variable that uses it. In his code, he switched back to his own input system, but yours are the ones in the comments. I hope you're appreciating the level of confusion my cousin can create in other people's minds. Now imagine what it's like inside his. Let's move on to my cousin's next micro project. We've got one obstacle. Now we want to add 3 or 4 more so you can jump across them and reach higher up. It's pretty simple. My cousin just duplicates the obstacle and changes its position. He thinks we should leave about 2 units of distance between each one. So now he's going to set it up like that and test if it works. All right, it works. He just needs to make the time between jumps a bit faster. Turns out it's actually 4 units of distance. Now my cousin is experimenting with 5 and 6 units to see what the limit is, so it's not too easy. I mean, we already know his games are always frustrating and way harder than they should be, which is exactly what he's teaching you to make too. Apparently, 4 units is pretty much the limit. Of course, my cousin is never going to bother finding the exact perfect value. Now he's building the level. Very simple, just repeating the same sequence over and over. All right, now we can reach the top, but we don't really know when we can jump precisely. So for this, my cousin creates a new orange material for the player. When you can't jump, the player will turn that color. To do this, my cousin first stores a reference to the player's renderer and the two materials to use. The rest is just copying what he writes. One small detail, my cousin already has the orange material ready and just uses it. You, on the other hand, will have to create it yourself like he showed earlier. As you may have noticed, my cousin only uses outdated code. Hopefully, it still works on your end. Anyway, we've got a couple of things to fix here. First, change that horrible orange color into something decent. Second, my cousin forgot to actually use the jump cooldown value in the script. Third, at this point, let's just create a proper material for the player and only change its color. That way, no more outdated code, much to my cousin's delight. You know, sometimes I get this weird feeling when I talk about him, like it's actually me. Crazy, right? All right, now we discover it wasn't my cousin's fault after all. It was VS Code autocomplete. Terrible. But my cousin doesn't feel like figuring out how to disable it. So for now, we'll just use a blue color because apparently the orange one isn't already available. Yes, these are the strategic decisions behind my cousin's games. Anyway, he finally finds a pre-made color that at least has some red in it. My cousin knows perfectly well how to make orange, but he's just too lazy to actually do it. So you go ahead and implement it properly in your code. Now let's tweak the obstacles a bit, and then we'll move on to the next micro project. And now he adds a coin, which is actually just a small yellow cube. When the player touches the coin, it disappears. When my cousin makes a game, he always thinks about the future. So in his great wisdom, he shows you how to create a prefab. It's basically a way to clone the same object. When you modify the prefab, all its copies in the game update automatically. For my cousin's purposes, he's just going to use a simple cube. And here he teaches you a little trick. When you create a prefab, always start from an empty object with reset values. All right, now he creates a script to attach to the prefab, giving it a simple instruction: destroy itself when the player gets close enough. Oops, my cousin forgot that the script still can't see the player. To fix that, the simplest thing is to use an instruction that finds the game object tagged player. As usual, my cousin already has this ready-made in his utility library. So here we are again with our code commented out inside his version. You don't need to comment it again. Now in my cousin's minigames, there's always a score and a time limit. So we need those here too. First thing, the score. Every time we collect a coin, the score increases. The tricky part is how the coin actually tells the rest of the game to update the score. There are several ways to do it. My cousin's method is to create a game script, tag it as a game controller, and let it manage the score. The coin then, like we did with the player, finds the game object that holds that script and grabs the component. From there, we just call a simple public function. All of this just to update a single variable. But if you don't like that approach, my cousin says you're welcome to write it down by hand. Good. I see you've noticed the efficiency with which my cousin wrote your code already commented out while keeping his clean version untouched. Now, none of this would matter if we had no way to actually see the score, so my cousin adds a text element for that. Important thing to remember, attach the text to the camera. All right, now we do the same thing for the time limit. We add another text element, same setup, same logic, etc., etc. Basically, we duplicate the score system UI and use it to display the countdown timer as well. Finally, my cousin picks a truly horrible color for the sky and creates a container object for the coins. Now we can expand the level a bit. This is where my cousin does his thing, and you do yours, which will definitely be better than his. It needs to be long enough to match the time limit you choose, maybe even a bit impossible so you can go for high scores. Anyway, I'm cutting the video here. I'll see you once my cousin has finished placing all the coins and obstacles. As I said, my cousin's level is terrible. It's just the same sequence, copy pasted over and over. Yours is definitely better. Anyway, it's a good idea to also put the obstacles under an empty game object so the hierarchy stays clean and organized. To balance the time limit, it's best to start with a generous value and see how many seconds you have left after completing the whole level. Then just add a bit of extra buffer on top of that. Here you can see my cousin forgot an entire platform, so the level is literally impossible to finish. Anyway, we still need one final detail. What happens when time runs out? My cousin already has a screen made that shows the score and sends him back to the garage scene, but you'll have to make your own. So we simply add a new scene with a text display and use a function to load it. Then, inside that scene, we create a timer that brings us back to the beginning. For passing data, there are several ways to do it. The one my cousin uses here is to use player prefs. You've just seen my cousin forgetting things and having to look them up in the Unity manual. And then he fails at the most important part, loading the scene when the timer runs out. So now he's trying to fix it. From here, my cousin says everyone goes their separate ways. You, in the same way, can make a start screen for the game, improve the level, or even create multiple levels. It's also a good idea to track a high score. As for him, From this point on, he'll just tweak the level in his own way and merge it with the rest of his trash games. If you've made it this far, congratulations, and enjoy your trash game. Sorry, one last thing, sound effects. My cousin always forgets them. Now, for audio, well, that's actually a bit of a problem. He already made some, but they're terrible. So I'll show you a site where you can find better ones. It's called Freesound. Just search for the sounds you want and download them. If you plan to sell your game, though, be careful with licenses. My cousin, by the way, makes his sound effects with his mouth. So if you want to use that method instead, you'll need to download Audacity and have a microphone. There are tons of tutorials on YouTube for that. Once you've got your sound as an MP3, you just import it into the project using Import Asset, and from there you can use it in your game. Now, once you have the audio asset, you can trigger it through code at the right moment. Here, for example, we connect it to the jump action. We could add a lot of sounds, but my cousin only adds the coin pickup sound. And that's it. Then goodbye.